Hello there, Stranger Things friends. Well, I did it. I watched the series finale, the big movie at the end of season 5 of Stranger Things, directed by the Duffer Brothers. And I can't stop thinking about these, we'll say, 7 things. Quickly, these aren't really criticisms. I love the series, I love the finale. They're just things that I didn't really understand, or I didn't really understand the choices, or I felt emotional about and I just wanted to bring them up. Either way, these are things I couldn't stop thinking about. You know the story, let's get into it. The first thing I can't stop thinking about is the man in the cave with the briefcase with the stone in it. What's happening? What? What is that stone? Who was that guy that had it? Who was the guy afraid of? It doesn't get explained, but it's crucial to the story because everything happens because of that. Like Henry's in the cave, he takes the stone out, it does something to him and he becomes Vecna or the thing. Whatever happens, happens. Everything's based off of that. So it seems kind of strange not to understand more about that. Now, I read somewhere that it's apparently might be explained in a play that the Duffer Brothers and somebody else wrote that's on Broadway right now in London, which I didn't know anything about this until yesterday. It's called Stranger Things, The First Shadow. And it's a prequel, which deals like Hawkins in 1959 and deals with younger Hopper and Joyce. Maybe it explains it in there, but to be honest, like you stream a series on Netflix for 10 years. I don't know. Seems like enough time to explain what's going on, but maybe they have their reasons. Maybe they didn't want to explain it because if you think about it, the stone exists before Henry, before Elle, before a lot of things that we know. So is this the first time this has happened? Is that the mystery where they don't want to explain it because, it brings up all other kind of questions? Like who's controlling this? Is it actually the military and their little secret thing, or does the military know about it? Because I've said before that Hawkins, it felt like the rest of the world wasn't involved in what was happening in Hawkins, right? There's no media. Where's the media? I know it's the 80s. It's not there isn't as much communication as there is now, but shouldn't somebody know? Or does that mean the military's so good at this happening that they quarantine, they go through the routine, they're learning what to do over and over again in each case, and they're good at isolating so that nobody suspects. It just kind of reframes the story for me a little bit in that you're running into something ancient and it's not being created. Does that make sense? Like Henry's having an interaction with the stone. It's like the idea of like, are you discovering something or is it just new to you? Does that make sense? Anyway, that's something I can't stop thinking about is who was that guy in the cave? Okay, the second thing I can't stop thinking about is what actually happened to Henry. You remember that Will said when they were interacting, Henry and Will, had a dialogue at the end, and Will says to him something like, "You don't have to let it control you." Okay, if there's someone deeper than Henry, who gets killed at the end? Who does Joyce behead? I didn't quite follow because, in the cave, in the spider thing, whatever that was, that monster, like, who was that? Vecna or was that Henry? Like, it wasn't quite clear to me. Like, I kept thinking Henry might come back at the end. Like, is he still floating, still out there? Or is that the thing that Henry was controlled by? I don't know, man. So the third thing I can't stop thinking about is is this a loop? Like Elle dies at the end, and is it possible that she's going to go through a process that's similar to what the thing that caused all these problems went through? Does that make sense? Like maybe the original villain, not Vecna or whatever was the original villain, maybe they also sacrificed themselves to close a wormhole for their friends 8,000 years ago and took a while to get back, and you're trying to get back, but you're jaded from time. Is Elle going to go through the same process? I don't know. I can't stop thinking about the possibility that it might be a loop. The fourth thing that I can't stop thinking about is Mike saying to Elle at the end, he said a lot of things, but one of the things he said was, "Please don't leave me." And to me, that kind of reframes the story a little bit, maybe even a lot bit, of this being about the fear of abandonment. Because it didn't feel romantic. It felt more existential. It almost felt like Mike was saying what we were thinking as we're watching the series. Like, please don't leave me. Like, he's saying it to Elle, but he's saying what we're thinking towards the show, if you like the show or you love the show, that we don't want this to end. There's like a touch of, I don't know, I don't want to say that it's a nod to legacy sequels or a criticism or anything like that, or the end of legacy sequels. It could be, I guess. But this idea that they're like friends of ours, like The Office got people through the pandemic and other times in their life. Stranger Things has been around for 10 years. Is he kind of articulating or expressing what we're thinking? And is this a way for them to not set up a return down the road, but just kind of like a, you know, an existential, please don't leave me. I need this. I need you. Don't anyone die and mess this up, because we can't come back without 11 and we can't come back without Mike or whatever. So I don't know if anybody else felt like that, but also it reminds me, this is going to be slightly a digression. There's an artist named Baz Yonder, I think that's what it is, where he wrote Please Don't Leave Me in house paint on a wall as an art installation in like the 60s. And that was kind of about the fear of abandonment too. And it really, it's in red house paint. If you look it up, it's a really cool piece. It just reminded me of that. It connected all of those threads. All right, the fifth thing that I can't stop thinking about is the red pill, blue pill moment for the town. It feels like they took the red pill, went through all that stuff, maybe, didn't like what they saw, came back, and are just going to pretend that they took the blue pill. I don't know how you have to return to some sense of normalcy. I get that after something like that, right? You've got to move on to a degree. But like a town square monument doesn't seem enough, and like pretending that graduation ceremonies matter, which Dustin really dropped the mic on that. But like, I don't know, it just seemed like small problems. Like, how could you go Christmas shopping after all of that? Like, it's going to be on your mind. There's no way you could wake up each day and never think about it. There wouldn't be a day that you wouldn't think about it, you know? So, and I think that like at the end, Mike, he's sitting with Hopper in that little town square. Everyone's graduating and Mike doesn't want to. And he says to Hopper something like, you can't unknow reality. I'm not okay with everything. I'm like, what's wrong with that? Like, that seems like a very normal thing. Once you understand that those monsters and wormholes are possible, I don't know how you go back to paying your mortgage. You know what I mean? And it feels, in a general sense, it felt to me not so much about healing. It felt a little bit more about denial. Not necessarily from all of the characters, and I'm sure I'm being a little bit harsh in general, but it did have that feeling to me of like, why are we pretending? We're good at pretending, the great pretenders, you know? Okay, the sixth thing that I can't stop thinking about is the fact that nobody really dies. I mean, Callie, and Elle dies at the end, but, you know, Mike's story in the last scene when they're playing games, a beautiful story, beautiful moment. It leaves the door open a little bit. Not a ton, you know, probably not, but it does leave it open a little bit. But nobody else dies. I think this is a huge problem that we don't have endings to stories anymore. We don't have to have them all the time. I like legacy sequels sometimes. I'm very nostalgic, generally speaking. But if nobody dies, the story doesn't end. How do you get mythical figures and mythical stories if the story never ends? So as sad as it would have been to see Dustin and Steve die saving someone, or through people to get picked off by Vecna, or someone to die from the military, I do think it's possible that it might have raised the stakes, especially when you go back and rewatch. You know, maybe I'd like to see that version of it, and maybe it would be worse. I don't know. But there was a moment where you almost got something like that, where Hopper was talking to Vecna and he shoots at him, but he accidentally shoots the tank and Vecna disappears. And you see that blood is coming from Elle's, because she's in the tank. And he just tricked Hopper to shooting the tank. And like, oh my God, that moment really, I was like, here we go. This is unbelievable. But then, of course, it was all just something he imagined. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's kind of like an easy out, isn't it? To just say that you imagined it or it was all a dream. I don't know. I really wanted someone to die. Sorry. All right, and this is the last thing I'm going to talk about. So this, I guess you could count this as the seventh thing, but there's just some rapid fire questions that I'm going to throw at you that I didn't really understand. Where were all the Demogorgons? What happened to all the bats? What happened to Mr. Wheeler? So Linda Hamilton's character and the government just let them all go back into society. Well, what about the pregnant women that were in the Hawkins lab? Did they just kill them, or did they let them go too? Have they done this kind of thing before? It did kind of feel like 18 months after the wormhole closed that things had progressed a little bit too fast. Like, I love Steve Harrington. I think he might be my favorite character. And the four of them are drinking on the rooftop of the radio station. But they're kind of talking like they're 35 and we're looking back at the kids who just graduated. like they're on a different timeline now. Like the space-time continuum sped up for them and they went to college and have been teaching at Smith for 10 years or whatever, and the rest of them were just graduated high school. I don't know. It seemed kind of strange, but I do like where it ended, where it began. The sprinkler, the house, Dungeons and Dragons, beautiful ending. And I love how the actors, you could tell that they were really crying, that this was the last time that this was going to happen. We think, probably, who knows. But for this moment, in that time in their life, it was very emotional. And there were great moments throughout. They're so good at pacing, the Duffer Brothers. Stranger Things is one of the best paced things, like telling a story. All right, let's go catch up with this character, and so on and so forth. Very, very good at doing all those things. I loved it. Despite all the things that I just wondered about, I loved it. I thought it was great. You could have been cut down the whole series here and there? Sure. That's a problem that lots of people have nowadays, is having things longer than they perhaps need to be. But it was really, I was never bored. So, and I mean, that sounds like a slam. Like, I shouldn't say I was never bored. I loved it. I enjoyed the whole thing. There are some things that I think about, but that's because I look at things with a critical eye sometimes for film or stories or whatever. Maybe that's something I got to work on for myself. I don't know. But what did you think? What did you think of the finale? Any of these things I'm saying resonating? There's a couple things I didn't get to in here that I'm sure I'll see on Reddit or rewatching it or something, but it's really sad. 10 years of Stranger Things gone. It's been quite a ride. Thank you to everyone who made that show. Fantastic. Yeah. Can't wait to see what happens on rewatches or the discussions about it, interviews, table reads, things like that, deep dives, documentaries. What a cultural thing. I saw it at home, but I didn't go to the movie theater. I thought about it, but I didn't. I just couldn't wait, and it was sold out. I was going to go the next day, but I just couldn't wait. Stranger Things. Great show.